How to build a mind so strong it terrifies people. Imagine possessing a mind so unyielding that even life's fiercest chaos leaves you unmoved. And in that eerie stillness, those around you feel both awe and a hint of fear. Picture yourself standing, calm and steady while the world around you panics. Your mere presence silently challenges others to question their own fragility. This isn't a far-fetched fantasy reserved for legendary heroes. It's a real, attainable power you can forge within yourself through timeless wisdom and relentless self-mastery. Point 1. Growth comes with loneliness. You don't need to put on a show of strength. What you truly need is a mind so steady that nothing can rock its foundation. No criticism can throw such a mind off balance. No failure can induce panic, and no temptation can lure it off course. When you cultivate that kind of inner strength, your mere presence speaks louder than any words. People around you can sense its power without you uttering a word. This kind of strength isn't new. It has been forged for over 2,000 years by warriors, emperors, and those who survived the chaos of their times. Their secret? One thing: Stoicism. It's more than an admirable philosophy. It's a battle-tested toolkit for anyone determined to take charge of their life. Mastering emotions, building discipline, seeing things clearly, and becoming immune to manipulation and pain. That if you're tired of living in chaos and long to become truly unshakable, read on. Stoicism might be exactly what you've been searching for. Do you aspire to a mind so powerful it unsettles others? Brace yourself, because the first thing such growth brings is an almost breath-stealing loneliness. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because for the first time you're doing what's right for you. You stop playing along with what everyone else takes for granted. No more faking enthusiasm at shallow social events or smiling when you feel empty. Instead, you begin questioning everything you once followed blindly. From that moment on, you cease to fit the mold of normal, and the world around you often doesn't like it. The clearer your vision becomes, the more it tends to unsettle those around you. Each choice you make in this new direction shines a harsh light on truths they've been avoiding about themselves. For example, when you quit a bad habit, someone else may feel judged for keeping theirs. When you refuse to join in gossip and stay quiet, people might label you as aloof or distant. But in truth, your actions are not an attack on them at all. You've simply stopped wanting to be like them. Be honest with yourself. Aren't you exhausted from performing, pretending to care about things that don't touch your soul? Aren't you weary of forcing a smile when you feel hollow inside? You're not heartless. You're just done being a background character in someone else's drama. Marcus Aurelius wisely observed, "To live a good life, we have the potential for it, if we can learn to be indifferent to what makes no difference." A good life isn't measured by how many people surround you, but by how free you are from things that don't matter. And here's what truly scares people. When you stop chasing meaningless noise, you inadvertently reveal how loud their own distractions have been. From here on, you must master one of the hardest skills of all: walking alone without losing your way. One teaches you how to do that. There's no class in school for staying awake while the rest of the world sleeps. But here's the truth: a strong mind isn't forged in applause and popularity, but in those lonely moments when no one understands you and you still refuse to fold. Picture this scenario. You're standing in a dimly lit room. No phone, no voices, no distractions, Just you and your rawest thoughts. Can you handle that silence? Or will you desperately scramble to fill it, to escape by drowning it out with noise? If you cannot be at peace alone with yourself, you'll always remain a hostage to the crowd. And if you always need the presence and approval of others to feel whole, you'll never be strong enough to become who you really are meant to be. Consider Emily Dickinson. She lived in quiet isolation, yet her words echo through the centuries. Nikola Tesla likewise spent most of his life in solitude, and his ideas electrified the modern world. Neither of them chose to blend in. They stepped away from the crowd. In that solitude, they found razor-sharp clarity. Ask yourself, are you willing to pay that price for clarity? Try it, even for one night. Turn everything off, close your door, sit down with a pen and paper, and write down the questions you've been avoiding. For instance, ask yourself, what am I avoiding? What truths am I afraid to confront? Why do I feel I need so many people to feel like I matter? The answers might not come right away, but in the space of that silence, something stronger will begin to grow inside you. And remember, loneliness isn't a punishment. It's the place where reconstruction begins. It's the quiet battlefield where your mind learns how not to break. Once you can stand strong in that silence without withering, everything else, judgment, rejection, failure, becomes just background noise. And when you emerge from that silence, with a mind that cannot be shaken, the world will begin to look at you differently. Not necessarily with immediate admiration, but certainly with caution, because people will know you're no longer dependent on their approval, no longer easy to manipulate. A mind like that makes people uncomfortable. Prepare yourself, because the next lesson is even harder. As you change, the very people who once applauded you might be the first to walk away, and you will need to stand tall when that happens. Point 2. Your change will threaten others when you start to change, even in small ways, like thinking differently, speaking more thoughtfully, turning down pointless social distractions, or sharing deeper perspectives. It can unsettle the people around you. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that your growth, however subtle, acts like a mirror, reflecting their own stagnation. And by instinct, people flinch from mirrors that show them something they're not proud of. You may have experienced this. You start reading more or adopt a simpler lifestyle. You stop complaining and instead take responsibility for your choices. You expect support or even excitement from friends. But what do you get? Perhaps a half-joking jab. Getting too deep for us, huh? Or, since when did you become so philosophical? Or even worse, just silence or disinterest when you share something meaningful. It's not that you're actually wrong. It's that you, simply by changing, make them confront issues in themselves. Real mental growth is usually quiet but powerful. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The light itself says nothing, yet suddenly everything hidden becomes visible. And if someone has grown comfortable in the dark, that light will feel harsh. Social psychology even has a name for this phenomenon: groupthink. It's a mechanism that keeps everyone superficially aligned to preserve a sense of safety and comfort. In a group where complaining is the norm, the first person to fall silent and start looking for solutions is labeled weird, distant, or even dangerous. Again, not because that person is wrong, but because they've disrupted the comfortable old order. And as we know, any evolution naturally threatens the status quo that no longer serves us. Think about why Socrates was sentenced to death. It wasn't truly because he corrupted the youth of Athens, as the official charges claimed. It was because he forced society to confront its own delusions, its blind beliefs, and its lazy thinking. Socrates neither harmed anyone nor stole anything, but through his relentless questioning, he made people think, and that alone terrified those in power. The same pattern occurred with Malcolm X. When he evolved his message from strict black nationalism to a broader humanist vision of unity, he wasn't just targeted by the existing power structure. Even some of his former allies saw him as a traitor. Sometimes, your growth makes you a threat to your old tribe. This raises a hard question. Have you ever held back your own growth just to keep others comfortable? How often have you deliberately shrunk yourself to stay safely within someone else's approval? Recognize this tough truth. The very people you're bending over backwards to please today might be the first to abandon you when things fall apart. But the inner strength you cultivate now, even if it means enduring loneliness, is what will save you in the end. Never shrink back just because others aren't ready to move forward alongside you. No one grows without leaving some shadows, and perhaps some people behind. If you feel lonely on this path, remember Marcus Aurelius's wisdom. The object of life is not to be on the side of the majority, but to escape finding oneself in the ranks of the insane. In other words, normalcy and majority approval are not the goal of life. What should you do when others are uncomfortable with your growth? Don't over-explain yourself. Don't beg for understanding or validation. Stay quiet, stay humble, and keep going. Real change doesn't need validation. It speaks through results and inner peace. Try this simple practice. Write down 3 things you are changing about yourself and note 3 negative reactions you've received from others in response. Then ask yourself, if I went back to who I used to be, would I respect myself more? Answer honestly. It's usually clear that going back would only bring regret. In the end, a strong mind doesn't avoid resistance. It endures and keeps moving forward despite it. Not everyone in your life will be ready to accept the new you. But if you are ready to grow, then stop asking for permission. Just move. If this journey resonates with you, acknowledge one change you are making in your life. Maybe even write it down or share it with someone you trust. Sometimes it takes just one person having the courage to be authentic for others to find their own courage. We've covered 2 lessons, and the road ahead is long, but trust that every step is worth it. 3. Let go of needing approval. Let go of needing approval from others. People often fear what they cannot control, and a mind that no longer seeks permission or validation is one of the most unsettling things to the crowd, because it no longer plays by their rules. The moment you stop living for others' approval, you become unpredictable. A society built on conformity, that unpredictability is seen as a threat. Not because you intend any harm, but because your independence forces people to confront what they've been avoiding in themselves. Nietzsche had a name for the person who achieves this: the Übermensch, an individual who rises above the herd's morality and lives by values of their own making. Such a person doesn't ask, "Am I allowed to do this?" but rather, "Is this worthy of me?" Just as a mountain climber wouldn't ask for directions from someone who never left the valley, a truly strong person doesn't wait for others' approval before making their next move. They've left behind the land of acceptable and entered the territory of authentic. Think about it. Have you ever stopped doing something you cared about just because someone else disapproved? Have you ever deleted a post or hidden an accomplishment because you assumed no one would care? The real question isn't how often you've censored yourself to please others. It's whose life are you really living? When the need for recognition is driving your behavior, you're no longer in control at the wheel of your own life. In that state, you're just a puppet dressed up to look like an independent mind. Epictetus advised, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Growth demands the courage to look wrong in the eyes of others. That's the price of freedom. The less you crave approval, the more freely you can do what's right. But society resists individuals like that, because if you prove it's possible to stand completely on your own, then others are confronted with the uncomfortable truth that they have not. Mediocrity doesn't need sharp weapons to hold you back. It only needs consensus. It will use pitying glances, practical advice, and quiet mockery to try to pull you back down into the ordinary. And they do this not necessarily out of hate, but because your growing confidence makes them feel smaller by comparison. Nietzsche described something called slave morality, a system where those who feel weak reframe their own shortcomings and failures as if they were virtues. When you stand strong, they might call you cold. When you stay independent, they might say you're selfish. But remember, you weren't born to please everyone. Galileo was condemned by his society for saying that the earth revolves around the sun, a truth that lacked popular approval at the time. Rosa Parks, just by quietly refusing to give up her seat on a bus, forced America to confront its own racial injustice. Real power doesn't always shout. Sometimes it's the quiet refusal to flinch when the world shakes. Here's a simple challenge to reveal how much you're shaped by others' eyes. Go eat by yourself at your favorite restaurant or cafe. Take no phone, no headphones, no book, nothing to distract you or to prove you're busy. Just sit still with your meal and be fully present in the moment. Notice the discomfort that starts creeping in. That feeling isn't true loneliness. It's the fear of looking lonely in front of others. But if you push through that feeling, you'll discover that the first taste of freedom is being completely at peace with whatever others might think of you. Ask yourself, if you never posted about your achievements and told no one about the work you do, would it still feel meaningful to you? If the answer is no, then maybe you've been performing your life for others instead of truly living it for yourself. It's like being a farmer who plants crops for likes on social media instead of real fruit to eat. That means you've likely been off track longer than you realized. As the Bible advises, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. You don't have to wage war against the world. You just need the courage to live differently. And it starts by letting go of the crowd's applause that if you truly want to build a mind that makes others uneasy in the best way, start by clearly defining your own values. Don't just borrow your morals from the majority. Don't wait for permission to act. Let every action you take answer one question. Does this make me a better version of myself? Once you can stand tall on your own, without leaning on constant praise, then you're not just formidable, you're free. Point 4. Own your life completely. You don't need to raise your voice to be taken seriously or even feared. Simply stay calm when everyone else is overreacting. In a world ruled by knee-jerk reflexes, the person who pauses to think is the most dangerous person in the room. That level of composed power begins with accepting a hard truth. No one is responsible for your life except you. Stoic philosophy often speaks of logos, the rational order that governs the universe. Everything in life operates according to certain underlying logic or laws, whether we like it or not. But logos is not the same as fate. It's simply the setting or context you find yourself in. How you act within that setting remains your choice. For example, you might lose your job, be betrayed by someone, or be misunderstood. That's the world doing its part. Your part is how you choose to respond. And that response is essentially your personal declaration of inner strength. Too often, people confuse faith with surrender, living under the illusion that if they live well, life will automatically go well. But true maturity begins the moment you let go of that naive belief. It begins the moment you can look in the mirror and ask yourself, if no one were to help me, how far could I go on my own? It's that turning point when you stop looking outward to blame external circumstances and start taking control of whatever is within your power. That is the point when you truly start to grow strong. When Nietzsche said, "God is dead," he wasn't cheering the triumph of atheism or celebrating chaos. He was issuing a warning. He had effectively exploded humanity's old moral foundations, declaring that from now on there is no pre-written guide, no scapegoat, no divine will, no predetermined fate that will define right and wrong for us. In other words, you are steering the ship of your life, and you're also the only one to blame if it hits the rocks. It's a lonely truth to accept, but it comes with a pure form of power that Jean-Paul Sartre took it even further when he said, "Man is condemned to be free." It sounds like a paradox. How can freedom, the thing we all crave, be a burden or a sentence? Sartre meant that without a God, without destiny, without any universal instruction manual for life, every decision falls on us and thus becomes critical. There is no one else to take responsibility for your choices or to take the fall for their consequences. You can't forever blame your parents, society, or your circumstances. Complete freedom is a burden as much as a gift. Yes, you have the right and the power to rewrite your own story, but you also lose the right to complain if you write a bad ending for yourself. If that feels heavy, good, it's supposed to. That weight is the price of real freedom. And if you have the guts to carry that weight, you'll become the kind of person that others don't quite know how to handle. They can't lure you with rewards. They can't scare you with losses. In short, they can't control you at all. And nothing unsettles people more than someone they cannot control. So where do you start in owning your life completely? Start by dropping all the familiar excuses. I'm this way because of my childhood, because of society, because they don't understand me. You are not simply that way by default. At some point, you chose to be. And you can choose to be different, but only if you're honest enough to wipe away that entire list of reasons you've been using to avoid facing yourself. Try a simple exercise most people never do. Each night before bed, don't ask yourself, "Who made me upset today?" Instead, ask, "What responsibility did I avoid today?" Then jot down your answer. Do this not to beat yourself up, but so that tomorrow you can make a different choice. Remember, a small choice made consistently can shift the entire direction of your life over time. A strong mind isn't one that already knows everything. It's one that takes responsibility even for the things it can't predict or control. If you've read this far, do me a favor. Stop for 3 seconds right now. Seriously, pause. Take a deep breath, look around, and be aware of this exact moment. You just proved something powerful. You can control your actions and attention at will. Even in the middle of reading this, you were able to pause and be present. That's real strength. And by making it this far, you've essentially made a personal pledge, a pledge to yourself that you're done living like a victim. Don't stop now. Every piece of this journey is building one thing: a mind the world will have to reckon with. Point 5. Strength is facing pain. How do you build a mind so strong that it makes others hesitate before challenging you? The answer isn't found in feel-good slogans like "love yourself" or "everything will be okay." Real strength doesn't come from denying pain. It comes from facing it head-on. Sometimes the cracks in your soul are exactly the places where the light gets. In illuminating the path to becoming unshakable, ask yourself, how many times in life have you chosen to run away from discomfort instead of enduring it? And where has that ever gotten you? A mind of steel is not forged in comfort and ease. It's shaped in chaos, confusion, and sleepless nights. Those are the moments where you either break apart or you rebuild stronger. We should remember that. Inner turmoil isn't a sign of weakness, it's raw material. It's the clay from which a deeper, stronger version of yourself can be formed. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that humans can endure almost any suffering as long as they can find meaning in it. So ask yourself, have you ever tried to find meaning in your suffering? Or have you mostly just tried to escape it as quickly as possible? I want to share a story here because it proves a hard truth. Pain itself doesn't destroy you. Avoiding pain does. Take the story of a man named James. He was a successful engineer, a husband, and a father. His world shattered when his 6-year-old son died in an accident. For months afterward, James was like a ghost. He numbed himself and shut down emotionally, burying himself in work and trying desperately to outrun his grief. Yet the more he ran from the pain, the more empty and drained he felt. Then one day, he found a pair of his son's little shoes still sitting under a table, and he completely collapsed. For the first time since the tragedy, he allowed himself to cry, to actually feel and remember. That breakdown became his turning point. James began writing letters to his son, one each day. In those letters, he poured out everything: the ache, the guilt, the moments they never got to share a year later. Those letters were compiled into a book that went on to help thousands of other parents survive their own devastating losses. Maybe you haven't faced a tragedy as crushing as James did, but everyone has some pain they keep buried. What matters is not that our pain exists, but what we do with it, whether we keep running or finally choose to sit with it. Try starting each day by asking yourself, what pain am I trying to ignore? Identify it and write it down. Do this not to complain, but to understand yourself. Then ask, what can this pain teach me? When you dare to confront your pain directly, it begins to lose its grip on you. It stops being just suffering. It becomes fuel. Just as coal under pressure turns into a diamond, your mind, under pressure, can sharpen and harden into something formidable. Seneca famously said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." Without hardship, there is no strength. So ask yourself, do you want the comfort of illusion or growth through truth? Now take a moment breathe, and ask, how many times have you backed down from something important just to avoid hurting or to avoid fear? How many big moments in your life have been buried because you were afraid of feeling too much? Here's a practical tool to start facing pain. Choose one painful memory that still affects you. Choose a painful memory. Identify one event or moment that still causes you heartache when you think of it. Rewrite that memory from the perspective of the future you, the you who has already survived and grown from it. Don't write as if you're stuck in the middle of the storm. Write as if you've come out on the other side and you're telling the story of how you overcame it. Because when you can change the story you tell yourself about pain, your mind changes too. Remember, a strong mind isn't something you're born with, it's something you build. And the raw materials for building it are often the hardest to hold on to: pain, loss, and failure. While others flinch away, you walk forward. When others complain, you learn. When others fall and give up, you get back up and grow. That is when people start to fear and respect you. Not because you never feel pain, but because you never let it break you. And once you've learned to turn pain into your weapon, you're ready for the next lesson. Point 6. Expect the worst, always prepare for the worst. Not so that you live in fear, but so that you become someone nothing can break. One of the most quietly powerful habits of mentally strong people is that they consistently prepare for the worst-case scenario. They do this not because they are pessimists, but because they refuse to live in denial. They don't like nasty surprises. They don't want an unexpected shock to rob them of their clarity. This mindset is exactly what makes them so dangerous in the eyes of others. After all, you can't break someone who has already made peace with the possibility of failure. Have you ever noticed? The person who unsettles everyone in a crisis usually isn't the one yelling or panicking. It's the one sitting silently in the middle of the chaos, face calm and unchanged. They watch the storm approach as if they've been expecting it all along. People might call such a person cold or unfeeling, but it isn't coldness. It's stoicism at the highest level. Marcus Aurelius wrote something relevant. The wise man sees in the misfortune of others what he should avoid. The wise do not wait for disaster to strike before figuring out how to handle it. They observe what happens to others, reflect on it, and prepare themselves accordingly. They willingly ask themselves the uncomfortable questions that most people avoid. What if someone I love dies unexpectedly? What if I lost my job overnight? What if I were betrayed by the person I trust most? They don't ask these things to torment themselves, but to bulletproof their minds that in the world of investing. The famed strategist Howard Marks once said, "Risk is what's left when you think you've thought of everything." He never enters into a deal without first playing out the worst-case scenario. It's not due to a lack of confidence, but because he understands that it's not failure that typically destroys you. It's being caught by surprise. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly imagined the worst-case scenario in your life? And conversely, when was the last time you broke down over something simply because you never thought that thing could happen? Here's a practical exercise. Build a personal collapse model for your life. At the end of each week, pick one area of your life, e.g. work, love, health, or finances. Write down in detail the worst thing that could realistically happen in that area. Be honest, no filters or sugarcoating. Next, write down how you would respond if that worst-case scenario came true. What would your backup plan be? Who could you lean on for support? Finally, Put your notes aside. Sit quietly and listen to your heartbeat. Feel your body's reaction as you imagine these scenarios if, after doing this, you're still breathing normally and not panicking. Then you're getting closer to becoming unshakable. People won't fear you because you're rich or smart. They'll fear and respect you because you simply can't be rattled. It scares them to see you face a potential loss without falling apart. They are unnerved that you have prepared for things they themselves don't dare to even imagine. Your calm resilience exposes their fragility. Think of how Mike Tyson would walk into a boxing ring in his prime. No trash talk, no smiling. His face almost blank, as if the fight had already played out in his mind 100 times. Tyson didn't just overpower opponents with muscle. He defeated them with a kind of calculated calm, a numbness forged from a life of poverty, abuse, and having nothing to lose. Preparing for the worst doesn't make you cold-hearted. It makes you immune to paralysis when hard times actually hit. Most people avoid thinking about painful possibilities because they're afraid. But you will do the opposite. You open the door to that fear, invite it to sit at your table, and calmly ask it, "What are you carrying?" Consider one last question. If you lost absolutely everything today, your reputation, your money, your relationships, what would still remain intact inside of you? A strong mind doesn't have to roar like a lion to show its power. It just needs to stay still and unmoved while the world around it trembles. Sometimes that simple calm is enough to silence an entire room. Once you become accustomed to welcoming and handling the worst possibilities, the next step follows naturally, realizing that not everything deserves a reaction, and choosing not to react isn't weakness. It's the ultimate sign of inner strength. But that leads us to the next lesson. 7. Power is not reacting in life. Many of our most intense reactions come from trying to control something that was never ours to control in the first place. We often react strongly to what others say or do, how strangers behave toward us, or to the outcomes of events that don't go our way. But here's the raw truth. We cannot control what other people think, do, or feel. Whenever we react impulsively in anger or frustration, it's usually a desperate attempt to regain a sense of control over something that was never in our hands to start with. There is one thing we always have full control over: how we choose to respond. You can choose to be calm. You can choose silence. You can choose to simply observe. That's your role in any situation. Everything else belongs to life, to others, to the world at large, and we don't have to fight over that part. Epictetus wisely said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." When you lose your temper, you have essentially handed over your mind to someone else's control. The scariest part is, they often don't have to do much at all. A single comment or a certain look from them, and you're already thrown off balance. Non-reaction, on the other hand, is the strength to accept that not everything is worth disturbing. Your peace. You don't always need to have the last word. You don't have to win every argument, because the real winner is often the one who can walk away without needing to defeat anyone. Consider this story, not for its drama, but because you might see some of yourself in it. Sometimes watching someone else live through a lesson can be a stronger wake-up call for us. Andrew was a high school teacher, not wealthy, not particularly powerful by any normal measure. But his students respected him and his colleagues admired him. not because he was especially strict, but because he was unshakably calm. One day, a student's parents stormed into the school, furiously demanding that Andrew be fired for an alleged discrimination against their child. They confronted him in the hallway, shouting so loudly that entire classrooms could hear the commotion. Andrew did not shout back. He didn't even rush to defend himself immediately. He simply listened in silence, keeping his eyes calmly on the enraged parent. When the parents finally ran out of steam, they didn't calm down, they just exhausted themselves. Andrew responded softly, "I understand you're worried about your child. I will file a report with the principal, as per protocol." He offered no long explanation, no argument in his own defense. Yet, the entire school leadership ended up siding with him, because no one could believe that a teacher so composed under fire could have been acting with ill intent. His stillness said everything. It reflected the parents' overreaction back onto them. This is the power of the shift to non-reaction. And non-reaction isn't the same as tolerance or surrender. It's the quiet stance of someone who knows the value of stability over petty engagement. Like a building that doesn't even sway during a mild earthquake. You just know it's solidly built. If you're wondering how to practice this, start small. The next time you encounter a pointless argument on the internet, or someone rudely cuts in line, or you receive a snide comment, resist the urge to respond at all. Don't reply, don't even speak. Just observe yourself in that moment and choose not to react. Let your silence act as a mirror so that others can hear the noise of their own behavior. Nietzsche once warned, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." When you react exactly how an antagonist wants you to, you actually give them the power to shape your character. In those moments, they are pulling your strings, even as you think you're making your own choices. The dangerous part is that you often won't notice this in the moment, because reacting can feel so righteous, like you're defending truth, honor, or justice. But really, you're just being dragged into someone else's game where the rules were never in your favor. A strong mind isn't defined by winning every debate or argument. It's defined by knowing which battles are worth fighting. It doesn't have to raise its voice to prove a point, because it knows its worth is not up for negotiation. When you stop reactively lashing out, you start living by your own standards. That's when no one can manipulate you anymore, neither with their words, nor their judgments, nor even their silence. Always remember, silence is power. Carry yourself as if nothing can pull you out of your centered self, because that is exactly how you become someone whom others both respect and fear, without you ever having to raise your voice. Point 8. Critical thinking is the sharpest weapon powerful. Minds possess a weapon that no one can strip away, a sharp, independent spirit that refuses to submit to the mediocrity of modern life. What is mediocrity in this sense? It's lazy thinking, shallow public opinion, and knee-jerk emotional reactions. In short, critical thinking is the sharpest blade you can forge for yourself, but no one is born with critical thinking already in hand. It's not a gift, it's a skill. And like any skill, it must be honed. In fact, it's a battlefield, a daily internal struggle where you continually interrogate your own thoughts and assumptions. You ask yourself tough questions, such as, why? Do I believe this? Who or what is influencing my thoughts? Are my opinions based on my own experiences or just echoes of the crowd? It's an unrelenting showdown between your habitual self and your truly awake, mindful self. And victory in this battle isn't measured by how many people end up agreeing with you. It's measured by the quiet clarity you gain each time you refuse to swallow an unexamined opinion. You don't need to control the world, only how you interpret and respond to it. But to master that, you have to train yourself to rethink situations, to think deeper, and to think differently than the crowd. That means when someone tells you, "Everyone does it," you immediately ask, "Who exactly is everyone? And why should I be like them?" When sensational headlines flood your feed, you pause and ask, "What's missing here? What's the full story?" You do this not just to be contrary, but to clear space in your mind for truth before your emotions or the surrounding noise can hijack it. The irony is that even though we live in the so-called information age, most of us have never been taught how to think truly critically. We consume information like fast food, quickly, easily, and without proper digestion. Then we wonder why we feel mentally anxious, exhausted, and lost. A strong mind isn't the one that merely holds the most facts. It's the one that knows when to question what's presented as fact. Every time you feel hurt by someone's words, pause and ask yourself, why did that upset me? What fear or insecurity did it touch in me? And every time you get angry, pause and ask, what am I actually defending here? Truth or my ego? The moment you start questioning instead of just reacting is the moment nobody else can control you. And no, practicing this kind of self-questioning doesn't have to be complicated. Each day, choose one belief you've always held about yourself, about others, or about the world, and put it under a microscope. When was the last time you truly changed your mind about something important or admitted that you were wrong? If you can't even remember a time, then ask yourself, are you really living? Or are you just replaying an outdated mental script over and over and in your conversations? Instead of impatiently waiting for your turn to argue back, try listening, really listening, to understand what's driving the other person's point of view. Seek the truth, even when that truth doesn't flatter you or your ego. A strong mind doesn't need to win every debate. It just needs to avoid wasting energy on debates that don't really matter. Like a skilled general choosing the battleground. A critical thinker carefully decides where to invest their mental energy. Strength lies not in knowing everything, but in knowing what's not worth believing, not worth reacting to, and not worth holding on to. So ask yourself, of all the things you believe, how many are truly your beliefs and how many were just programmed into you by someone else? Remember, you might not be able to fully control your circumstances, but you absolutely can control how you interpret and respond to them. Critical thinking doesn't make you stubborn. It makes you unmanipulable. You won't be easily convinced by flimsy arguments, and you won't be easily triggered emotionally. You become the kind of person people don't quite know how to persuade or fool, and that, again, unsettles them. You don't need to shout to prove your strength. If you think deeply and speak only when necessary, your words will carry a weight that can make others fall silent. Make it a habit, starting today, to pause and ask yourself, have I really thought this through before you react or decide on something important? We've now explored 8 principles for building a mind so strong that the world can't help but take notice. As you can see, there's no need to raise your voice. There's no need to prove anything to anyone. Sometimes quiet strength speaks. loudest, making others feel small without you saying a single word. That kind of power comes from a personal journey that no one else fully sees. It's born in those moments where you stop living for approval and start living by what's right, where you realize that no one is coming to save you, and that realization is perhaps the best thing that could ever happen to you, where you stop running from loneliness and instead sit down for an honest conversation with yourself. Remember, a formidable mind doesn't seek to dominate others. It simply cannot be dominated. It chooses carefully what to think, when to stay silent, and how to act with clear intention. In an age where everyone seems to react impulsively, the rare individual who pauses to think will inevitably stand out. That rarity itself is power. Take a moment to reflect on which of these principles resonated with you the most. Think about the lesson or idea that made you stop and think. That's a sign of where you might need to grow next. Consider sharing these insights with a friend or loved one. It might be exactly what they need to hear right now. Finally, remember that committing to building an unshakable mind is a lifelong journey. There is always more ahead, more to learn, more to experience, more to strengthen. Embrace the process. Each day you choose this path, you are transforming yourself into someone who moves through life with quiet, tremendous power. And that is something the world will have to reckon with.